All right, what's good, everybody? Welcome back to the No Level Cap podcast. I am Sage Ashford. This is the No Level Cap crew. We bring you all the anime, all the gaming, none of the bullshit. We have an announcement. I am proud to inform y'all we have made our way onto Spotify. We got our
Woohoo!
first episode up. Y'all check us out. Just go look up No Level Cap, follow us, give us 5 stars to help us out with that algorithm that everybody's always having trouble with. Anyway, this week our focus is on we've got two topics. One is it's not like we just got into the spring season, and so at first when this topic came up, I was like, I don't know about this because I didn't want to infringe on spring anime without giving everybody a chance to see at least 3 episodes of most of the anime that have come out. I don't think it's going to quite time out because I think we're going to try to do the spring anime. We're going to talk about that next week. I don't know if it's going to quite time out that we get a chance to see 3 episodes of everything, but we should get a chance to see 3 episodes of most things. But for right now, what we're going to focus on are like anime we're watching that aren't from this season that you like really vibe with, you really fuck with, like if anything that you really think is like, okay, this is flames to me. So I want to actually see, Will, where you at right now? Like, what anime are you watching that isn't from the spring season that you really rocking with right now?
I actually took the time out of my day to like put it down on a notepad because I was like, let me keep them here so I don't have to go search for them in my head. So it was like, don't forget them when you get on camera. So, but yeah, the number one thing I started watching recently that wasn't this season was Odd Taxi,
Mm,
and
Oh,
right,
that was like one of them anime of the year type things last
yeah.
year. How you feeling
yeah,
about it?
I'm actually really liking the way it's going because the first episode just kind of threw me for a loop. I'm just like, okay, so it seems really mundane at the start, but once it kind of gets past that and you kind of start hearing and seeing things, it's like, huh,
Okay,
it's
so
pulling
for
something
people who
off here.
haven't seen Odd Taxi before, like, what would you say it was about?
Honestly, it's about this. It's basically about this guy because the not this guy, but most of the characters in this are animals, if you will. So I would kind of say think Beastars, but kind of like on a different art style. Think that, but civilization is all animals, and it follows this taxi driver. Just like I said, living a normal, mundane life, taking people where they gotta go, doing what he has to do. But little did you know is that in the middle of this, every conversation he has, he's dealing with someone that needs something or wants something. Like the first guy you meet in the first episode, he wants to go viral on social media. And for some reason, he can't do it, but he randomly does it when he manages to leave his phone behind after taking a selfie with said taxi driver. And then the police are looking for someone that's basically running amok out here, raising all types of hell, looking for him. But for some reason, we got a picture of him. He's in the selfie, but we don't know where he's at. Then the police is still dealing with our taxi driver. They take the man's dashboard cam footage. And at the end of that episode, spoilers and all that, I'm sorry for those of y'all who hadn't watched it, but they switch info. I don't know what the what the thug did, but the police officer handed off the SD card to him. And that's how that first episode goes. And I'm just like, so we about to really get into something deep here. Because the thing that's interlocking everybody is a missing high school girl. And we don't know what's
Mm.
going on with that. So we're gonna kind of probably tie the pieces up episode by episode right now through the interactions that the taxi driver has to deal with. And so far, it's really fun. I just enjoy it. I enjoy that vibe that it gave.
I heard with Odd Taxi, it was like one of the shows, like it like the thing that made everybody like it was that it made people just because like everything about the show has you questioning the reality of the show. Like
Mhm.
everything about it is like, okay, it's like are the characters reliable narrators and like are they even really animals? Like I've heard that they're like hints that maybe it's that's just some unreliable stuff going on. Like I can't spoil it because I haven't seen it, but I have read a couple of reviews and shit like that.
Okay, yeah. But that's one of the shows I'm dealing with right now that I like. And another show that I just picked back up recently was The Laughing Salesman. And I know you probably never heard of it, but
For once,
bas
I hadn't. What is this?
okay, The Laughing Salesman is about this guy. His name is Fukuro, not Fukuro, Moguro Fukuzo. He's basically a guy that walks around. He's like this big, like cartoony looking guy. Like think of a character you've seen in a cartoon or a show that has this everlasting grin on his face with his teeth showing. That's what he looks like. And he's like this short, stubby guy. He's basically the guy that sells you your dreams. but it comes with a consequence at the end of it, more than likely. And the episodes kind of run themselves kind of similar to Hell Girl from way back then. For people who may know about Hell Girl,
Yeah,
So it's like
it sounded
episodic.
like hell.
yeah, and it runs very similar to that, but except it's kind of more comedic in a way. It's not extremely serious, but it's more comedic. Because like the most recent episode features a guy who wanted to cure this little loneliness he had, and he didn't want to go back home because he felt like his life wasn't great. So salesman meets up with him, tells him about himself flat out to his face, like you stopped here in this town because you didn't want to go home. You didn't want to go back home to your wife. You know you ain't making no money. Why are you going back home?
Wow.
Come to the spring with me. Let me hook you up. Took care of him and everything till one of the best girls in the inn came and spent the night with him, drank all night with him, and then come to find out that wasn't the girl that he had in there. Gave this man everything he wanted. Turned around, the woman said 5,000 starting on my services since you want to keep me in this room with you. Like, but it's like it's teaching them lessons each episode for each person that has like an issue. They want something that they desire. The businessman grants it, and he's gone by the time they end up having to deal with the punishment.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
So this is like I won't say a more lighthearted Hell Girl, but it is like Hell Girl without is like you ain't going to hell afterwards.
Exactly. It's like
But you
that,
do
but
have
you're
to
not
deal with
going
some
to
type of
hell.
consequence.
You deal with some type of consequence, whether it's like really silly comedic or it's like a life lesson in a way.
Kind of like is a somewhat like the villain from a more lighthearted version of the villain from like D. Gray Man, the guy who would like promise people to bring back the loved ones, but it turned out to be kind of a little more sinister.
Something like that, yeah. Exactly like that. It's more lighthearted. So I say if you want to get into it, it's definitely not a bad show because it does what it's supposed to do. It's not gonna try to give you this long winding narrative. It's like this guy's gonna go from person to person, granting their wish, and at the end of it, something bad is more than likely bound to happen to them. No death, no hell, no purgatory, none of that. It's just like, oh, you wanted this? Well, deal with this here. That's your problem. I'm going. I'm on to the next person. And the last one that I have is something I've been meaning to start for the longest time, especially since it's getting a new season this year. Golden Kamuy started that.
That's been like really big for a while, right? Like it's like one of those shows
Yeah.
that's like it's not necessarily like I don't know Attack on Titan or Demon Slayer level popularity, but it is one of those shows that people hold up as like really like really good, really solid, and it's been going for like some years now.
It has, but it's only like 36 episodes long right now. It's only 3 seasons. And the newest season is supposed to start in October, from what I've read. I'm not sure if that's 100% true, but if it does, I can catch up right now before we get to that point.
Doesn't it
And
focus on like a group of people that I guess they're not like they're Japanese, but they're like of like a different ethnicity or something like that. They're kind of like
The Ainu tribe, I believe.
The Ainu tribe.
Yeah.
It's the Ainu tribe, and it's placed a little bit after the Russo-Japanese War.
Okay.
That's when that is placed, and it's centered around this one guy who was basically like quote unquote immortal because he practically stood on top of a pile of bodies basically during that war. He was that man, and the stories about him was like not a gunshot, not a cannonball, not a tank could stop you, but for some reason you're still here. And to kind of make it short, he was told this story about this treasure because he's a panner, like getting gold.
Got him on the search for One Piece.
Basically, got him doing it in rivers and streams, man. So yeah, he's doing this, and he gets this story about, hey, these prisoners have had these tattoos attached to them, but it's like a map that leads to this treasure. If you can find it, so be it. But you have to find these prisoners and basically getting them because to get the map, because the map is tattooed to each prisoner. But the guy that was telling him the story was one of them. He messed around and got himself killed by a bear because he thought he said too much. He let the alcohol get to him.
Ooh.
He let the alcohol get to him. He sold. He sold down the river so bad. The next morning he woke up and said, "I got to kill you," and then he couldn't even shoot the gun, but he got beat up. It's an interesting start to it, and I'm thinking I'm gonna just continue to watch it till I see what it does because I've seen nothing but great things. Like you said, it's very good from what I can tell, but from all the praise I've seen, I'm ready to finish watching it because I think it's gonna take me for a wild ride. Not no JoJo level stuff, but I think it's gonna do great.
So of the three, which one would you say is your favorite so far?
So far on hand, I'm gonna say Golden Kamuy at the moment because I want to watch something like this right now. I do since I finished Tokyo Revengers and another couple of shows behind that. I want to watch this now. And behind Golden Kamuy would be Odd Taxi and then The Laughing Salesman.
It's interesting, like you bring up Golden Kamuy because it is one of those like unique. Like I feel like there are a lot of copy paste ass shows out there right now. Like so many anime just have like the same fucking plot. They remix it slightly. It's that
Protagonist
meme.
looks pretty much the same. Just the hairstyle is just
Yeah.
slight, like maybe one strand of hair is slightly to the left or
Yeah,
something.
y'all know what I'm talking about. It's all the same. It's that one meme. Change it up, change your homework a little so they don't know that I copied and all that. Like it feels like that. And Golden Kamuy is like one of those like, no, this is nothing like. There are very few anime out there that are like this. So I mean, like, it's good that there are still some anime out there like that because sometimes you do feel like if you're not willing to dig, or people that aren't willing to dig will just say, man, all anime is the same now. It's like that's not necessarily true. I mean, you do have to put a little bit more work in now than you would have like 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, you could even say that about Odd Taxi. Like that's a standout in terms of it's not like it doesn't have like the traditional anime look to it.
It doesn't look like what you would expect an anime to look like, which is always a welcome surprise to me. Like I think the first time I ever really noticed that was with Rage of Bahamut. It was like this show that came out in 2014. It was like a fantasy series.
Yeah,
I've heard of that.
Yeah, I've heard of
it.
But
it wasn't like traditionally anime. Like it had like it was missing so many classic anime tropes, and I fucking loved it for that because it was so different and like it stood out at a time where I was starting to notice all the shows were starting to run together like a mediocre Drake album. I was like, man, I can't do this no more, man. Like, fuck. Every time I look at the seasons, I'm like, these shows, they all sound the same. Like, cut this shit off. So I mean, like, Attack on Rage of Bahamut, just kind of like, okay, we can finally get something different in this bitch. Rakeem, I know that you've been watching some shows outside the spring season. So tell me, like, what's your favorite so far?
Okay, so this is gonna be a toughie between my two favorite. Although I have three shows I may have been watching. My favorite show for outside of spring season I've been watching for almost a year, almost 2 years, has been Dragon Quest: The Adventures of Dai, because it is the anime that feels like home. It is a Saturday morning cartoon in anime form. Because Dragon Quest: The Adventures of Dai was based off an 80s manga and an 80s anime adaptation. This is a readaptation of that anime. It still has some of those older tropes of 80s anime. And those of you who've watched older anime know that there are certain things of how things are written, how things are shown in the 80s that are just so different. It's even hard to explain to people now, like why the feeling is different, how things like the camera angles, the fight scenes, they just approach things in a different way back then. So the reason I like this show so much, I guess, because it's very traditional shown in anime, but it has a good emphasis on like building this small cast and making you feel like really connected to them in their journey. The basic premise is you have this kid named Dai. He's shown in the beginning of the anime to be raised by this group of monsters. He's actually raised by monsters and has a relationship with these monsters. Where in this world, that monsters and humans don't really interact like that. In fact, they're usually enemies. There's this big enemy called Hadler early on, who used to be the lord of the monsters, and he's the one who's kind of driven this wedge and brought war to the land. Over the course of the anime, eventually Dai has his mindset to become a hero, and he gets trained by this great hero named Avon, who was the hero who saved the world from the villain Hadler in the first place. Well, through some certain events, Avon is killed, so to speak, and he is left Dai alone with his other protege Pop, and they go on this journey to allow Dai to become a hero. That's the basic premise of the show. And along the course of the time, over the course of the show, they come in contact with other characters. They fight different protagonists, and it's kind of like it's really cool because it's defeat means friendship. The anime, because basically everyone he comes in contact and fights, he basically befriends all of them. From a gator monster you meet later to a dark swordsman, he has his interactions. He's able to kind of win over different people from this evil army. The fight scenes and the interactions between the fight scenes are really, really good. They're really impactful, and the animations is really top notch as well. It just feels good to me. I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain. It's just nice to kind of watch this show in the anime. It doesn't have a lot of the modern tropes, like we talked in our last podcast about how does this pervasiveness or perviness throughout modern anime that's kind of inched in. This is kind of in a phase that was a little bit before that was so prominent. So that's not as prominent in this anime. It's a lot more how should I say lighthearted in that sense, but serious in the moments it needs to be. So I've been really enjoying that anime. a lot. Now, secondarily, I would say the next anime I've also watched mainline has this anime called World Trigger. And conversely, why I like this anime called World Trigger so much, it was brought up to me by my friend James. He brought it up to me because I had seen this anime multiple times on streaming services. I was like, what is this? What is it? What's going on? My friend James really sold me on the anime to give it a shot, but he told me it was going to be a slow burn. It is a slow burn. The basic premise of World Trigger is that mankind has finally come in contact with people from a different world, like aliens. In this world, they're called neighbors. There's a lot of allegory between like aliens and neighbors, border and border patrol. So it's basically like you're
Shit.
it is. You're basically like a border patrol officer that stops aliens from coming into the world and wrecking stuff up. So the protagonist is a very young character who's like new to the organization. And an incident happens where the neighbors come and attack the city he's in, and he tries to stop it. But it's one prevailing thing about the protagonist is he's not very strong. And then eventually he meets another neighbor who is from the other world, but he's not on the same side as neighbors. He's come to his world because of some things that happened in his past. Eventually, what makes this show stand out above a lot of other shows I've watched, even though it's a lot slower early on, is that there's an emphasis on tactics and teamwork like nothing else. The framework for this show is that the border agency that houses the candidates to protect the people from the aliens, they use this hard like technology, using the use of these items called triggers. And through the use of these triggers, they're able to put these bodies on that they don't die. They're able to fight continuously, and they're even able to fight with like missing limbs and things like that because their physical bodies are not hurt. These light bodies are like think of almost like a VR body. And then when those bodies use up their energy, they're shot out. They come back, they go back to where they came from. What's cool about the show is that they have this emphasis on like focusing on real tactical like techniques. They use weapons that's like very similar to real world weapons, so it's not a lot of fantasy involved. They use guns, they use swords, they use sniper rifles, cannons, different
Whatever
things
get
like
the
that.
job done.
Yeah.
Exactly. But in the vein of the show, they're using these concepts, these squads. And the main thing you get from that is it's about complementing each other. These squads of three from these different groups. There are multiple squads throughout the show. I mean dozens of them. And they're led by like a team leader. And there's this emphasis on like balancing your team around like having a person who focuses on long range or having an up close and personal person. And then using their abilities to complement someone else's abilities to take out their opponents.
So a
Eventually,
little
it's
bit like a Black Clover in a sense.
kind of like Black Clover in a sense.
Okay.
Yes. It's kind of like that. But what makes it really good in the middle of the show, the main character who I say is not very strong. He's more of a defensive character. He has a giant shield. And there's a training exercise they go through later on where he is the first one taken out, even though he's the captain of the team. And he has this real introspective moment where he has to feel like, why am I holding my team down? And unlike any other anime where you have a quick training montage, or the guy suddenly gets strong out of nowhere, or he gets an item, someone comes to this man and tells him straight up, you can't get physically stronger in a short amount of time. You can get strong. So he uses his brain. He's like, look, I can't be better or stronger than my teammates. We have a guy who's a melee guy. We have a long range person, but I can complement what they do. And so instead of emphasizing him being overpowered or taking over all the enemies, he's not like that. He can't do that. Instead, he uses what he can do. Like, for instance, he uses an item like a spider web, like a grappling hook, that allows his faster teammate to bounce off the grappling hook and move all around the arena or something like that. He's able to call shots and line up things better because he sees a better perspective of the whole battlefield. He studies patterns. He looks at the long game. He's like the tactician, the coach of the team to a degree while he's out there. He focused on what he was good at. Yeah.
So what you're saying is he ain't no Goku knockoff.
No, he's not a Goku knockoff, and I love it. Not every protagonist needs to be someone who can just one shot everything. I mean, that's tough place for that. One Punch Man is amazing, but I like the protagonist who's vulnerable to a degree. Who has to rely on his teammates and like actually use his team, and they actually work together to complete a goal. That's why I'm enjoying World Trigger. Now, the last show I've been watching, many of you probably know, I've been watching Ranking of Kings. I think Ranking of Kings, although Dragon Quest Adventures Die is probably my favorite show I've been watching it much longer. Ranking of Kings for this first season, and I don't even know if it's going to have a second season, this first season is amazing. It does so much in the short amount of time it has in like 23, 24 episodes. So basically, Ranking of Kings revolves around this character named Boji, who is dumb and deaf. He cannot speak and he cannot hear. he's able to read lips, but people around him do not know he's able to read lips. So he's in this world where people make fun of him for his disability, even though he's a prince and he's royalty. They look down on him as someone who's unworthy of the title he's holding. He comes in contact with this character named Kage, who's like this shadow creature who robs him and steals his clothes. The Boji is so like he's such an endearing character because he's so young and so innocent.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't help but root for him. Like you want him to succeed, you want him to be safe. And he's the type of guy who, like, even though he got robbed of his clothes, he's a prince. So this guy who robbed him, he's came back, kept bringing him more clothes. He kept bringing him more clothes. He kept bringing him more. Every day, he's got more and more clothes. There's a scene he just layers on top of himself like multiple parts of clothes to give the Kage. And that's like, he's so good, like, so innocent. He'll turn people who are like cold-hearted or monsters, to like on his side because they can't, you can't hate this kid. He's too nice. But what's great about this show is that I can't tell you all the details because literally all the early stuff in this show was for you if you've seen it already. If you go
Yeah,
like
I agree.
episode 3, 4, 5, yeah. So
Mhm.
basic premise, let's just say it has a little bit of Game of Thrones to it, where there's a lot of espionage within the kingdom. There's twists and turns. There's some supernatural elements to it, and then there's some traditional shonen stuff in there too. So it's a nice combination of like almost like a Studio Ghibli vibe with the graphics and the lightheartedness, and then a combination of like Game of Thrones with kind of some of the viciousness of the scenes and political intrigue behind it. And there's some supernatural elements that will all combine into this nice dish, and it's just great for what it is. I'm really enjoying Ranking of Kings. I recommend it to anybody who's watching out there. So my 3 shows: World Trigger, Dragon Quest Adventures of Die, and Ranking of Kings. Those are the animes I'm keeping up with right now.
So it's interesting when you bring up Dragon Quest and you were like, it feels like home. It is like sometimes people don't give enough credit to shows that can execute existing tropes, or like old school tropes in this case. They can execute existing tropes at a very high level, because just because you're doing those tropes doesn't mean you're doing a good job of doing those tropes.
Amen.
There are so many shows, and that's what people miss about. And I mean, like, I don't mean to bring this show up because I'm like a huge fan of it, but this is what this show does right, and that's why it's so popular. That's what people miss about My Hero Academia. My Hero Academia, like, they're like, oh, it's the same as every other show. Yeah, it is. It is the same as a lot of other shonen, but like, it executes all the shonen tropes at a super high level. It's doing it better than most shows can do it. And Dragon Quest does like that 90s anime vibe, that 90s action anime better than most shows did it back then. And like, definitely most shows that would try to do it now would probably miss the point. But fortunately, it has that source material that it can work off of and kind of center it a little bit, as opposed to like, if you were trying to work off of, like, oh, this is the vibe that I felt when I was a kid, like, that's gonna be a lot harder to do.
Yeah,
So,
that was the criticism of Black Clover for the longest time, was that it was like, it's just the same old. Oh, this kid essentially just wants to be Hokage, yada yada. And I'll admit it was like that in the beginning, but it kind of grew into its own later on. It just took some time.
that's exactly the problem with Black Clover. It took way too long. Like, I would say the underwater temple is like the part where a lot of people might catch on, but the part for certain that most people are going to catch on is like the Royal Magic exam.
Yeah, I agree.
And by that time, that's like, I think between 60 to 70 episodes in. Like, bro, that's way too fucking much. What's good, Keen?
I was about to say, I was watching Black Clover about 2 years ago, and I will say, man, about episode 35, 40, that's when I kind of dropped off. I was like, man, I'm just not, for me, it was a combination of, a lot of these tropes we hit before, especially you watch Naruto and different shows like that. And then the animation in those early episodes wasn't of the highest quality in some parts. And that kind of took me out of those shows sometimes. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those that I think you're better off reading than watching at a certain point. That's just my opinion.
I mean, it is enjoyable, like, because once you buy into the characters, I could tell you, like, go back and watch the manga. I mean, read that. Go back and watch the anime, because there are probably some scenes that you would want to see animated. But at first, I would recommend reading the manga. And the one thing I will say about Black Clover is, and this is dangerous, but I mean, I would prefer this than the opposite, I suppose, is that every arc is better than the last arc. Like, the introductory arc is not very good. the arc after that, it kind of builds up characters. Like you start to understand Noelle and Asta, and they're like, what's the word I'm looking for? Their interpersonal relationship, that type of thing.
Yeah, they're dynamic. Yeah.
Yeah, their character dynamic. And then like you keep going from there on, like every arc is a little better than the last one. And then by the time you hit the Royal Magic Knight exam, it's like we're off to the races. Fairy Tail does that too, where Fairy Tail has like a very weak intro, and then like every subsequent arc, all the way up until its last arc, is like really solid. So I mean, like I would prefer that than like the opposite, where it's like, yeah, man, this show started out amazing and it just turns into trash like Tokyo Ghoul. Yeah, like there are reasons why that happened, and it's not specifically just because Tokyo Ghoul's bad, but when you go off the manga, like as soon as it's a risk. It's always a risk. If you go off like your source material, you can fall off because like the writers may not have in mind the same thing that the creator of the story had in mind. So you never really know. Terrence, what's up, man? Like, tell me what anime that you, not from this season, that you like really loving right now.
Okay, I'm gonna approach this a little differently, just because not all of them will I say I'm loving per se, but I like them, and I'll kind of explain why for each one. So the first one is, well, actually, all these are pretty much from, well, I can't say last season because technically, well, I guess that was winter. So like some are from maybe last year, some are from like winter of this year. I don't remember where each one of them lines up in terms of their season, but whatever. The first one is going to be Sabakui Bisco. That was from the last season. This one is interesting. Just to give a synopsis of it. The world that they're in, it's infected by this thing that's called rust, where it's like this disease that infects people, kind of like a skin disease, where their skin slowly starts to, literally turn to rust. And when it finally rusts, that's when like that part of their body will start to fall off or something like that. It's a very impoverished world. And our main character is a doctor who is residing in one of these cities that's kind of impoverished. And he's very good at helping people. He's a very nice guy. He'll a lot of times do his services free of charge. And he ends up running into this guy who is known as a mushroom keeper. And in this world, mushroom keepers are seen as these people who spread the rust. And you learn later on, you find out more about the story behind that and what the real truth is. But just for the sake of the description, we'll just say that, yeah, the mushroom keepers are the ones who are supposedly spreading the rust. And their lives get intertwined, and the doctor goes on to join the mushroom keeper, and things just kind of go from there. It's a good anime. I've been enjoying it. I'm on like the last 2 episodes because it finished this last season. It's one of those anime where it's good, but I don't think it's going to be remembered long term. And if we're being honest, there are a lot of anime like that where you watch them.
That's a podcast topic unto itself.
Yeah, you like them, but you're not really going to remember them in the long term. Maybe like 2 to 3 years from now, they're not going to come to the top of your head when you're talking about anime. Like if someone brings it up, you'll say, "Oh yeah, I remember that. That was a pretty good show," and then you just kind of move on from there. This is one of those shows where I like it. It's fine. I do know there was one point, there was one episode where something happened that people kind of memed it a little bit just because it was so weird. It was the episode, I think it was like episode 3 or so, where the doctor, he's pulling like this larva kind of caterpillar thing out of this girl's mouth. I'm pretty sure you all have you've seen what I'm talking about.
Whoa.
I think somebody here posted in the chat, or we were talking about, but well, whatever. If you don't remember, it's fine. But yeah, that it was kind of a weird scene, and some people were kind of like, what is this and what's going on? But for the most part, it's a solid show. I just don't think it's going to be remembered, in T-1 year, but some anime are like that. You enjoy it for the ride that it provides, and you just kind of go from there. The second anime that I wanted to bring up is Total Fantasy Knockout. It has a longer title, but I'm not. It's technically I forgot it has a long title.
Is this the one with the dudes like reincarnated as like a hot chick?
Yeah. It's like reincarnated as a Total Fantasy Knockout. The title is something a little different, but most people just call it Total Fantasy Knockout. And the synopsis for this, and honestly, the reason why I got into it was because it actually features 2 guys that are in their 30s, and that for us, when you watch anime, most anime, they take place in high school or they're about teenagers or like very young adults who are like barely in their like 20s or something like that. So it was actually really cool to start off the first episode with both the characters. They're working their regular jobs. They've been best friends since like elementary school. And yeah, now they're like 32 or something like that. So that was interesting and kind of gave me a reason to stick with it. But there are these two guys and they both get like, well, one of them gets kind of drunk, and by the end of the in the first episode, he's like, I just wish I could be reincarnated into another world as a totally hot girl or something like that, just because he was tired of just being considered like this boring average dude. And so this goddess comes and she grants him his wish, and he and his friend, they get wished to another world, and he's reincarnated as this cute girl who has the actual power to like, I won't say turn people on. That's not the right thing. It's like
Charm
she's
them? Charm them?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, she has like this charm power where it just infects everybody. And it's one of those where they go from there where they're supposed to fight like a demon lord and shenanigans ensue. It's very much like an isekai parody in relation to something like Konosuba. And it's pretty funny. It provided some good laughs for me. I've enjoyed it for the most part, much like Sabakui Bisco. I'm about 2 episodes toward the end, so I don't know quite how it ends yet, but it's been a fun little ride. I will say that I don't think while it's good, I don't think it's like at the top echelon per se of isekai parodies, because we gotten a lot of them now. I mean, Konosuba is definitely at the top in terms of those. I mean, No Game, No Life, you can pretty much see that as like a parody in a sense. How Not to Summon a Demon Lord. There's been plenty of them. Well, I say maybe No Game, No Life is more so comedy. I'll put that. Maybe not parody, but more definitely so like comedy.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'll say that. Like I said, I don't think that it necessarily excels. Like it's good, but it's not like great in terms of isekai parodies. I think one of the better isekai parodies that a lot of people have slept on is Cautious Hero. Like that one is really funny, and the big thing about it is that it has like this twist that I definitely will not spoil toward the end that just completely flips the anime on its head and just makes it an anime that you'll actually remember. And that's the thing about this one. It's good like Sabakui Bisco, but I don't think it'll necessarily be remembered maybe like a year or two from now. And the last one, I'm actually glad that you did your synopsis on it, Rakeem, because your synopsis is really good, so I don't really have to dive too far into it, is Ranking of Kings. I started that one. I'm about 5-6 episodes in because I've been watching with my roommates. And yeah, it's good. I'm going to say this right now. Some respect needs to be put on Witch Studio's name. Witch Studio has made some damn good anime within like the past 5 or so years. Man, a lot of stuff they worked on are nothing but bangers. I mean, they started with Attack on Titan, and Mappa is working on that now, but even their work on Attack on Titan was great. On everything. Yeah, it's crazy how a lot of the Wit stuff is going to Mappa, but anyway, that's a whole other conversation. They did Vivi last year, which was incredible. They're working on Spy X Family with Clover Studios, I believe, or Cloverworks as a collaboration. And they did Vinland Saga. Like, Witch Studio is goated in my opinion. Like, they've definitely done some really good work that I think people should appreciate more. And the same thing is with Ranking of Kings. Like Rakeem said, it has this very Ghibli-esque style. It very much reminds me of the game by Level 5, Ni no Kuni. It very much reminds me of that in terms of, it's something that I could easily see done as a game. It's really cool. And like Rakeem said, the main character, he's so innocent, but he's so endearing. And the cool thing about him is because he's deaf, there's sign language that's incorporated into the show. And that's not something you see often in anime, let alone just media, period. So that's really cool that you have a deaf and dumb protagonist. Dumb in term, well, I don't know if there's like a better term for it, or if they still just call it dumb, but we'll just go with that.
Mute, maybe?
Mute. There you go. I figured there was a better word for it, but yeah, mute and yeah. But yeah, it's a really good anime. I've been enjoying it so far. Like Rakeem says, there's a lot of twists and turns. It definitely has a Game of Thrones aspect to it. The characters are really cool. I've been watching the English dub of it. The English dub is great. Overall, it's just a really solid show, and I can see why people were telling like giving it as a recommendation, like, hey, you should watch this. This is anime of the year material. And I agree. Just so far from what I've seen, just in terms of like the art, the animation, the characters, it definitely seems like the type of show that, yeah, it was anime of the year material last year. So, yeah, those are the three. And I will give an honorable mention to one that I'm watching from the last season that's called The Genius Prince's Guide to Raising a Nation Out of Debt. Yeah, another one of those long title shows.
I've heard of that show.
Yeah, Sage, I know a lot of people thought it was similar to the other show that you mentioned. What was the one where
The Realist Hero?
Yeah, The Realist Hero. Yeah, because this isn't that show about him like raising a nation out of debt or something like that?
Literally, like like the way it works is like he gets isekai into another world. He gets summoned. He's not like hit by Truck-kun or nothing like that. He gets summoned to another world, and they're like, yo, basically they were gonna sell him into slavery. They were like, look, we can't pay taxes, and or I think there was like some along the lines of we can't pay the tax we need to this like nation that's doing all the fighting for us. We got like, you know, demon army we got to fight or whatever, and so we summoned the hero, and we gonna send your bitch ass over there. And the guy was like a civil servant in his regular life, and he was like, no, the fuck you not sending me over there. And he started balancing their books and figuring out like how he was gonna make it work, and like basically got them money and got them food, and was like, nah, y'all gonna send money over there, fuck that, y'all leaving me alone. So yeah, that's how a Realist Hero works. I don't know how Genius Prince works.
Yeah, Genius
I think
Prince,
he was like a trader or some shit.
Well, Genius Prince isn't isekai first off, so that's the big difference there. But the synopsis for Genius Prince is that, well, he's a prince obviously, and he has this he's a prince of a nation that is kind of falling on harder times, and his plan is to ultimately get the nation to like a certain point in terms of where people will actually want to buy it. And he wants to just sell the nation and just go live comfortably. He doesn't really care about being the prince to these people or anything like that. He just wants to be done with the nation and kind of just move on with his life. And so shenanigans ensue. Well, I won't even say shenanigans. It's kind of, the show is surprisingly gets pretty real. Because it's a lot of it is about war between other nations. So in the first episode, they go to war with this other nation, and they actually end up winning, and things just kind of escalate from there. And it's actually really cool in terms of how it shows you like the tactics on the battlefield. Like the prince himself, he's actually a strategic genius because he went to military school and he was at the top of his class. But most people don't know that other than people within his circle. So people in other nations, they don't realize they're dealing with someone who's like an S tier in terms of like strategy. But yeah, it's been a good ride. I'm maybe about 3 episodes or so before the end, and I've really enjoyed it. The show surprisingly gets graphic because when they go to war, sometimes blood does get spilled, and there's some treachery, and there's kind of like some, not Game of Thrones, but kind of like some political. There's some political aspects to the story because, I mean, since it is about nations and wars and everything. So there are times where there might be a princess that comes in from one kingdom that the prince knows, and there's maybe like a negotiation for them to get married as like a way to kind of like tie the nation. Stuff like that happens, and it's just a really cool show, and I think it's one that not too many people were talking about or they kind of just slept on. And I can see why, because the first episode, I will admit, it didn't leave the best impression in terms of its production. The first episode, the animation, especially the animation for the war scenes, it is extremely basic. Like, instead of showing like the soldiers fighting, they had like these little avatar looking, like basic avatar looking things. I'm trying to think of a comparison, but I can't think of it. But yeah, they have these little basic avatar looking things like running
NPC
around.
looking ass characters.
Yeah, exactly. And kind of like clashing with each other and whatnot. It did not look that great. And even the way that they did the OP, it was very cheap looking, but it does get better from there. Like the second episode is a lot better, and the third episode is much better. So it's one of those where I'd say give it the good old 3 episode rule. If you're not into it by the 3 episodes, then you could just bow out. It won't be for you. But I do think it's one of the anime that was kind of underrated from this winter season. And yeah, if that sort of thing is, if you're interested in that sort of thing, like the synopsis sounds good to you, I recommend you check it out. But those are mine. Sabakui Bisco, Total Fantasy Knockout, Ranking of Kings, and honorable mention goes to The Genius Prince. I'd say out of all these, the show that is easily the most memorable is Ranking of Kings. Like when I finish that, I think it's going to be is going to be good, especially from the way Raheem was talking about it. I'm looking forward to getting to the end of it. So that's my
Let me know
list.
when you finish it. We're gonna have a conversation.
Yeah, we'll talk. Trust me.
I will say, like, surprisingly, the thing that sold me the most was realist, not realist. Fuck, I forgot the name that quickly. That is not a good sign. Fuck it, whatever. Okay, so here's a question I will ask you instead. I'm gonna ask you this: do you feel like with Sabakui Bisco and Total Fantasy Knockout, those shows would be more memorable if they were longer instead of being like one season? Do you feel like that, like, they don't have enough time to like establish themselves in the minds of anime fans?
I don't think length is necessarily the issue in this case with them. Well, I can't speak to Sabakui Bisco because I haven't seen all of it yet. I'm still a couple of episodes away from the end, so I don't know how the season wraps up. So maybe there could be potential for another season. Who knows? But there are some elements, I will say, for Sabakui Bisco, there are some elements where I think they could flesh out the plot a little bit more, but I don't think making it longer would necessarily fix that. I think if anything, it would just kind of lengthen it. It would artificially lengthen it to where people would just maybe kind of get bored with it after a while. Because if anything, I'll say this. The whole you need more than 12 or 13 episodes to really tell a good story, I feel like for me, I knew that wasn't always the case, but for me last year, that was bumped when I saw Vivi. Vivi told an excellent story from episode 1 until the end. And it showed that you don't need this long 24, 36 episode anime to tell a complete story. And in the case of Total Fantasy Knockout, I mean, it's a comedy. So for the most part, I think they could easily wrap it up in one season and that's kind of it. But I think the only reason that they won't be remembered is just that they don't do anything that like stands out in a great way. It's not that they're bad. They're not bad shows by any means. It's just that they're not on the level of like a Attack on Titan or Ranking of Kings or whatever show is like really popular right now. It's just,
well, that's what I mean. Like, I guess that's what I'm saying, because I feel like, I mean, yeah, of course, short anime can indeed, and a lot of times do become like really well known, really memorable anime.
Yeah.
The thing is, I feel like the shorter you are, the better you have to be. Yeah. Longer anime have a chance to like establish themselves, and like even if of course there's sometimes where it's like, all right, you're clearly dragging this out, but sometimes you get like a second season and they come back and they throw a completely different idea at you that kind of changes the way you look at the storyline, and it's like, oh, this is really interesting, and you get that different hook that pulls you in, and then from there it can establish itself as something unique. But I mean, like, if you only
Oh, no.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, in that case, I still think it's kind of the same answer. It's just that because the thing
now,
is,
with Total Fantasy Knockout, the one thing I will say, with comedy, they tend to run their course 12, 24 episodes like that. They don't need too much more than that. But Sabakui Bisco, like action anime, I feel like can have a little bit more leeway.
Yeah, it can. I'll just say that I think still when it comes to series like that, the first season still kind of has to warrant it having another season. And I don't know if either of these shows really warrant it per se. I wouldn't mind it, but if they didn't get another season, I would understand. It's not one of those shows where it's like, why in the world did this not get a second season? It's not like a No Game No Life where it's just mind-boggling why that does not have another season. It's just these are the type of shows where they get one season. If they don't wrap things up nicely, you're probably not going to get another season. You just kind of have to deal with it. Maybe go read the manga. So, yeah.
I mean, if the manga
I don't know if that answers your question or not. Like, does it?
I mean, like, I guess I see where you're coming from. I mean, the one thing I'll say is that there's a lot of anime that gets animated these days that sucks. It fucking sucks. Like, there's some anime that come out and they just ass. They like cheeks. And it's like, I was reading a thread the other day about Urusei Yatsura, which is like this old 1980s manga that made by Rumiko Takahashi. And if you don't know it, it's like a classic. It was like a classic 80s show, and they're doing a remake. And so like people in the thread were talking about how like, oh man, I don't like, was this like really a seminal classic? The answer is yes. And then they were like, it may not get finished. And I'm like, if they redo it, they may not finish it because sometimes anime come back and they don't get finished. And I'm like, that's crazy to me in a world where we see 40 to 50 anime per season, and a good, I would say third. I'm not the one of those people that's like 90% of anime sucks. That's not true. 90% of
not at
anime is,
all. No,
yeah, it's not for you, but that doesn't mean it sucks. But like a third of it might suck. And like those third, it's kind of crazy that so many mediocre ass anime, below mediocre, I'm gonna say like, you know, really trash type series get made at all, as opposed to like giving something a shot, you know, like giving a show that like has a manga and it's like, oh, we cut it off before it can really get going. It's like, man, you could have gave that show another season instead of wasting time on it. Like I'm still baffled that One Punch Man is on season 2, and I'm like, that shit was an American phenomenon. I don't know how popular it was in Japan, like the anime. I don't know how popular the anime was in Japan, but that shit was huge over here. And the fact that it's not on season 5 by now is absurd. Yeah. But I mean, you know, like I guess that's just the way the anime industry is right now.
Yeah. I know it's I believe the manga is monthly, if I'm not mistaken.
I think the manga might be monthly, but the web manga is not. It's been going, and it's way ahead.
I'll put it this way: at this point, with everything that happened with season 2, they better wait for Madhouse, or at least the animators that worked on the first season. They better wait for them to come back, because you don't want to make the same mistake you made with season 2, where season 2, while the story was better than the first one, the art and animation did not at all. It wasn't bad. It did, like some people said, like, oh, this is absolute garbage. It was not garbage, but it did not.
Wasn't good enough.
It did not live up to the hype of season 1. You can't have like this. You can't have this. What do you call dang it, what do you call animation that's just like really, really good? What's the word?
Sabashi.
No. Damn it. What is it? It's at the tip of my.
I know what the word you're talking about.
Sakuga. Yeah, you can't have like this top tier level Sakuga, because season 1 of One Punch Man, that was considered like some S tier animation, and then you can't go from that to like this B tier level animation where it's not bad, but it just does not meet the standards. You know, that
it doesn't elevate the material.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we kind of skipped over me as far as anime, and I was intentional, really. I mean, I'm the nigga that gives everybody a chance to talk. So it is, but I mean, like I was listening to y'all, I'm like, damn, because y'all picked a lot of anime that, like, you know, outside the box, they're not really like what you would expect. It's not that they're not popular, but it is like they're not the basic bitch anime. And for the most part, like I won't say any amount of basic, but it is like, dang, you know, it's eclectic. The one anime that I watched very recently, before I even knew we were going to do this topic, was this anime called Tsukimichi Moonlit Fantasy. And it's like this isekai anime that is, it's kind of a parody, kind of not. Like the manga, I got a chance to read the manga. The manga's not as, it's still got humor to it, but it's not as humorous. There is like some more darker themes being explored, and like more character stuff being, and I kind of wish the anime had done that too. And it still might, because it got a season 2. But I binge watched it in like literally a day and a half. Like I found out, I was on TikTok. I was on Tickety Talk, and I saw this cold ass fight scene, and I was like, "What the fuck is this from?" So I like looked it up, found out what it was, and I like started watching it, and I just breezed through it because it was only 13 episodes. And the plot of the story is basically this one kid gets summoned by like a god, and the god's like, "Look, bro, your parents are from another world, and they agreed to send you back to the other world on some Tenchi Muyo type shit. If you a real hardcore Tenchi Muyo fan." They agreed to send you back in exchange because they got a chance to come here. And the dude was like, "Look, man, I'm gonna give you as much power as I can to help you out. However, you also gonna have to talk to the goddess of that world, and she kind of weird." And you're like, "Well, what do you mean by weird?" And the dude at first is like, "Oh man, you know, I understand. You know, people be weird, like people be different. I'll do whatever I can to help her out." He get over there, and the goddess is like, "This ugly motherfucker." And he not really like hideous, but he just kind of average looking. And like her world is literally just the most beautiful model tier type people, the whole world. And she takes one look at him, goes, "Fuck, get this ugly motherfucker out of here." And she like hits him with like a blessing, and the blessing basically allows him to understand the speech of like demi-humans, orcs, monsters, that type shit. And she's like, "All right, look, I'm gonna place your ass at the end of society so that my people don't have to see you. And she just plucks a nigga, and he's down there in the muck with no, and he spends literally 3 days walking just to find any semblance of any life. And like, of course, it's an isekai, so you find out he's like absurdly strong. He's able to like beat, you know, hella people ass and shit like that. And it does have it. It's a cross between Tensura, reincarnated as a slime, and Konosuba, in that there's like comedy elements to it, and it's kind of poking fun at certain parts of isekai. Even though I think the anime does that, and like the manga and the light novel aren't doing that. I just got this feel like from what I've read of the manga, it doesn't feel as intentional, but it does have a lot of city building elements because the main character kind of goes around and collects these demi-humans and effectively shoves them into a pocket dimension where they get to build their own city, just because like away from humans and shit. And I it's good, but it is in that vein of what Terrence was talking about with Sabikui Bisco and Total Fantasy Knockout, where it's like this doesn't do enough to stand out. It could. That's why I asked him about like, okay, do you feel like if it went on longer, it would be better? I feel like if this, because like to me, a problem with a lot of fantasy anime is that they don't get enough time to develop. Like for me, when you think about Lord of the Rings, when you think about Game of Thrones, you think of these vast, grand, sweeping epics, and for you to only try to shove that into 13 or 26 episodes, it's like, you got a lot of nerve, bro. Like your world is not gonna stand out. It's gonna be cookie cutter as shit. And so like I think you need somewhere between 40 and 65 episodes to like really get the scale and like, oh shit, like we went on a journey, it was an epic odyssey, that type shit. And maybe if this show continues to get seasons, it can pull that off in the same way that I'm pretty sure Mushoku Tensei, if it gets 65 or however many episodes, will probably also pull it off. Where we stand now, that like they're finally starting to introduce elements like outside, because he was sent there for a reason. He was sent there to fight like a demon king, and it takes until like episode 12 that you finally even get a chance to hear about a demon king. And the manga takes about as long, not quite. Like there's some things that they do differently, some things that are kind of big, but you can make up for in a season 2. But like they do things differently and show you like, okay, well here's what's going on in that society. Like here's what's going on outside. Like because there is a war going on. You've just been away from the front lines because I mean she did pluck the dude all the way down to like the edge of society and shit. And so the last episode had the episode that I was looking for, and that's the one other thing that I think it can stand out on. Like it had this really amazing fight scene because the character had been amassing all these powers and abilities and things, but he hadn't had a chance to actually fight anybody that was on his level, so it was like never a threat. But then finally he runs into somebody that is on that level, and you get to see like this back and forth, and it's like hella different magic spells being used and like really beautiful, gorgeous animation for the fight scenes and stuff like that. And it kind of sold, like I was like, okay, I'm really ready for season 2, even though there are a lot of not so much problematic, but just kind of tiresome, like, oh, I've seen this kind of stuff before, elements to the show. And then I guess the other 2 shows, one show that I saw that I've been watching off and on is Lupin the Third, Part 7. I mean, I've always been a Lupin fan since, you know, we used to watch it back in the Adult Swim days when it came on, like, I think it was Lupin Part 2 that they used to show. I watched Part 4 when they remade it, when they finally brought it back after like 30 fucking years or whatever, and they finally gave it a TV show. I watched that in 2015. That one was not very strong. I watched Part 5 in 2018. That was really strong. And then this one's kind of fun. What they've done is they brought in Sherlock Holmes, since he is a public domain character, and he's like if Zenigata were clever. Like he's constantly outmaneuvering Lupin, and Lupin has to like really think to outmaneuver Sherlock and kind of get away, because otherwise he's gonna get caught. But there's also this other plot line going where there's this secret society, I believe called Raven, that's like really trying to keep their existence hidden, really trying to keep their motives and what they're doing hidden. And both Lupin and Sherlock, for different reasons, are like trying to expose them. And that one's pretty good. It does a lot of really experimental stuff insofar as like its direction and like the production of the show. Like there's one episode that's literally like a direct lift of a specific novel. And I forget the name of the novel. I have to go look it up, but it's like beat for beat plot wise. And they reference the novel in the movie, in the episode. So it's kind of weird. But I mean, like, it's really good. Like, I love the way that I love how Lupin has gone from being this silly show to like almost like avant-garde, like the way that they take chances with the direction, the way they take chances with the characterization, because it is like these are such classic characters. You can't really fuck them up anymore.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that Lupin's been going for so long.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Like I mean, Fujiko really, when you think about it, is the first lady of anime. She's like, I don't know if she's the first, but she's definitely the most like the longest lived female anime character to stay that popular and that relevant for so long. So that's pretty cool. And then the third and final anime that I've been watching off and on for like 3 years, really. And I think the reason why I've been taking so long is because I just don't want it to end, is Mobile Police Patlabor. Man, I fucking love that show. I always loved the design. I always thought the mech was cool. It's like a mech that looks like a police officer, which normally I wouldn't be with, but like it's just the way the show handles it is just genius. The protagonist is like this young girl who's from like this countryside, and she just always wanted to pilot a giant robot, and she literally falls in love with her giant robot, not like in a creepy way, but just like in a I really care about this is my partner, like this is somebody like I go out and I trust with my life, because I take care of like mobile Patlabor crime, which is like patrol labor. Like I take care of like these crimes that can only be solved with a giant robot like this. And so you'll see her like polishing the mech, and she gave it a name. She calls it Alphonse and shit. The series is almost anti-mecha. Like there are certain elements to it where you're like, no mecha show today would ever do this. Like for one thing, she doesn't. You know how most mecha anime have like a mid-season upgrade? Mm-hmm. She said, fuck that. Ain't no mid-season upgrade. I want Alphonse. That's my partner. I've been trusting him all this time, and he's kept me alive all this time. I don't want no upgrade. And actually, the series ends. And I mean, like, I would say spoiler, but like, this show is from like 1991. I
would say Patlabor is old.
Yeah, it's old as sin. So
out.
Yeah. If you want to see it, you're gonna go see it, whether you're spoiled or not. So like, the end of the series is with them finally being forced to get an upgrade, because like most of the time, like they're not even allowed to like test the robots. Like they're not allowed to like use live ammunition when they fire their guns, because they can't afford it. It's very down to earth. It's very realistic. The character designs are super realistic. Like they don't look like, and like, you know how in most anime, you can look at the anime character, like the characters that matter immediately and go like, that's a protagonist, that's a protagonist, that's a protagonist. Those are NPCs. No. All these characters look like regular fucking people. They look like people that gotta get up and go to work in the morning. And there's also, we talked about problematic anime last week. This is like the opposite of that. There are no problematic, like you can dig deep and find some problematic elements to it, but it's none of the fan service. None of the women are ever sexualized. They're definitely beautiful women in it, but like they're never sexualized. They're never hella makeuped up and all that shit. They're allowed to exist without being like the male gaze being focused on them. That shit is genius. The main character, Noa Izumi, she's like a tomboy, but she's just really cool and spunky, and probably one of my favorite anime characters of all time. So yeah, I mean, like, I've really loved that anime for a while now, and I've just been trying to stave off the end, because I'm like, man, I just don't want this show to, even though there's like an OVA and a movie and shit to I just didn't want it to end. So those are the three that I've been watching. Tsukimichi, which I hopefully the season 2 is better than season 1. Season 1 was okay. It's like a 7.5, but I like would want to see an 8.5, 9, to elevate. That Lupin Part 7, and then Patlabor. Okay, so the other topic that I wanted to talk about was we're not quite halfway into the year yet. We definitely haven't hit any of the big shit yet. Well, we kind of have with Elden Ring, and we kind of the Kirby game and Triangle Strategy and
Horizon.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what was the Sony game? So like we've seen some of the big releases, but there's still supposedly a lot of big releases to come. And so I wanted to ask y'all, like, what major games are you excited about for the remainder of the year? Rakeem, you suggested this idea. What games are you excited about? Like, give me 2 or 3 games. Let me know. What's up?
Well, anybody who knows me knows that I am a diehard Final Fantasy fan. I've been for a very long time. So the continuation of Final Fantasy 16, which
that shit ain't coming out.
Well, it may and may not. I don't care. Anyway, anybody knows me, Final Fantasy 16 is probably like the most anticipated title for me personally. I remember when the trailer for it came out, and man, it's pretty old now. It came out over a year ago.
Yeah.
When that Square Enix when that flame hit that dude's eye and they zoomed out and it was like this Final Fantasy. Oh my god, I was ready. That sneak peek was all we got. I'm just ready to see what this evolution is going to be because of course from the gameplay we saw, it looked like it was going to be kind of Devil May Cry, more action oriented. And I think it's just kind of I'm ready for that return to form because in the past Square Enix had some disappointments with 15 in certain ways, like how the story came to be, the amount of time it took, and then the kind of disappointing ending. I was very disappointed in 15 towards the end. I kind of like the open world elements of the game, but the ending I just did not like. I just didn't like it. And then I played vanilla 15. I didn't play Royal Edition. I got through the game. I didn't go back. That's kind of how I felt about it. So the reason I was anticipated about it because I wasn't a fan of 13 either. Now 14 is fine. I played the MMO, but I'm not an MMO guy like that. So I only play that in phases. So I wasn't a big fan of 13, and I wasn't a big fan of 15. But I don't feel like Square Enix is incapable of making a great Final Fantasy game. They definitely bounced back with some of the other titles, bringing back like Trials of Mana and the 3D they brought. The Nier Automata was good. They outsourced Platinum, that was good. But the new Nier remake came out. We have a push for the Saga game, so they're really honed in right now on their IPs. They are really focused on bringing their IPs back to the forefront in every way. And what better way to make Final Fantasy 16 a top quality title? And of course, they have the director from 14 working on 16 as well, which probably kind of made me excited because it's going to be a more focused project. And it already seems like they're just more focused now, just completely. Like I don't know what they did in the background to on their things they need to hit in the background or like their organization, but it seems like they're more focused on their titles, so they're getting those titles out now. They're not messing around anymore. They're hitting games out. Triangle Strategy came out just a few months ago, and we got the trailer last year.
Yes.
They're not messing around anymore, man. So I'm excited. Now, will it come out this year? Probably not. Maybe mid 2023. I'm fine with that. But I'm very excited for Final Fantasy 16. And the other game, which unfortunately I believe got delayed as well, God of War, the new God of War game is coming out. Yeah, Ragnarok. The reason I'm really excited for Ragnarok is because God of War 2018 really surprised me. Not that it was going to be a good quality game. I played the previous God of Wars, had a lot of fun with them. I played 1, I played 2, I played some of 3, never finished it because every homie I had at the time, besides Sage, he doesn't care about Kratos. Every homie at the time, literally had the game and beat it in front of me. Every single one of them.
That was the same for me. I watched Devin beat it.
Yeah, everybody had it, everybody played it, everybody beat it. Like what I'm playing this game for. But when I got my hands on God of War 2018, the love and care for that game from beginning, and I mean beginning, the opening sequence to the end, the pacing, the story progression, the character development between Kratos and his son, the main cast, the emphasis on the details in the combat, the flexibility of the combat now, the customization. It was all so freaking well done. And it was nothing. I didn't even perceive God of War could be a game like this anymore. I've always, hack and slash, mini games, puzzles. It had been there for over a decade. We kind of got settled into it. It's really interesting to me when you kind of can bring something back and reimagine it, and it's just as good, if not better. In this case, I think they've improved enough to say it's better than the original idea.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited for Ragnarok to improve on that formula, continue on that formula, because for what they made last time, which is one of the best games of the last generation, I want to see if they can make this game one of the best ones of this generation as well. Those are the two main ones. Besides that, just rumors. There's a rumor of like a Final Fantasy Tactics remake or reboot. I'm kind of excited for about that. Yeah. We don't know if when that's coming out, but I'm excited for that. I need it too. I really want a Legend Dragoon remake, but hey, I'll take a Tactics remake as well.
Man, that's a long shot. That's a shot in the dark.
I swear that is.
You'll get that when Devin gets Jack 4.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
Yes, and the only other thing is, I guess this would be unannounced, so this isn't technically part of the topic. But what NRS's next project is, I'm kind of interested in it because they've taken a much longer cycle than they normally do, and they've been very hush hush about it. So we think, there was some leaks that maybe probably will be in the new Injustice game, but also some leaks that might be a new MK game because of the issues they had with Warner Brothers. So I'm excited to see what it's actually going to be. Is it going to be MK? Is it going to be Injustice? Is it going to be a versus game? Is it going to be something new entirely? I'm very intrigued by that concept. So those are the kind of games I'm looking forward to.
Now, what I've heard from like the reliable people is that the next game is Mortal Kombat 12. It's gonna have a much larger roster than like the previous Mortal Kombat games, which is saying a lot because those rosters tend to be huge. And then my own personal supposition that I mean, like I've talked about this with you, is that they tried to work on an Injustice 3, but then all the hullabaloo with Warner Brothers and whether or not they were going to continue to be owned by DC, I mean, whether they were going to continue to have any access to the DC license, made them go, well, screw that. And then they like shelved whatever work they had on Injustice 3 and immediately started work on a Mortal Kombat 12. And that's why it's been so long, because they've managed to stay fairly consistent with that 2-year cycle, going from MK9 to Injustice to MK10 to Injustice 2, from Injustice 2 to MK11, and then they finally broke that cycle after like a console generation and a half, really. And that can only come with like either a massive overhaul of the next game, like it's not going to be like what you're used to, or between COVID and lockdowns kind of slowing down development, and then also you having to shelve the whole fucking video game, and then you're like, okay, well, let's start from scratch. And that feels like why we haven't seen the next project, if it is indeed Mortal Kombat 12. If I had to guess, Mortal Kombat 12 probably still comes out in an April, just not this April. Probably gets announced in the latter half of the year, probably close to the Game Awards, if not just at the Game Awards. So that's just my guess. If you had to pick, Keen, between God of War Ragnarok and Final Fantasy 16, only one of them could come out this year. You've got control over it. Which one would you pick?
Final Fantasy 16. No problem. No fish. It's just me. I'm a diehard Final Fantasy game. Well, you guys see, like I mentioned like earlier when we talked about the anime topic, that Mushoku Tensei feels like home. Final Fantasy is my home. When I sneak into a good Final Fantasy game, I turn into 7-year-old, 8-year-old, 9-year-old Rakeem that popped on that PlayStation and saw that scene in Final Fantasy VII with the great opening, with the train coming down the station, and the guy said, "Get down here, Merc," and dude coming out with a giant sword. Final Fantasy VIII, where you got Squall and Cypher in their duel. Final Fantasy IX, we have this troop of people on this airship coming in to do this play, but they're really trying to kidnap a princess. That I am strapped in. I am tuned in when it's Final Fantasy. So when it comes to FF, I don't play about that. That's my game. That's my series. And they bet not mess this one up. That's all I'm going to
say. I mean, you're not
wrong.
FF
for Rakeem stands for fucking fantastic.
You're right. You better be fucking fantastic.
I mean, that's
why he's my boy. That's why
it's going to have to be fucking fantastic. Like you said, they kind of have, like the last two have been divisive in their own way. And so ideally, they finally knock one out of the park where it's just universal acclaim, 90 plus Metacritic, millions of sales, preferably. Well, I mean, they've already fucked up the launch. I'm pretty sure it only launches on PlayStation at first.
Right now, only PlayStation.
Yeah. Is it PlayStation PC or just...
It's PlayStation and PC.
Yeah, okay.
It's PC, but it's PlayStation first, then there.
Oh, so the PC release comes later?
I think it should be that way. I think it is. That's the way I've seen it.
Oh, okay.
Square.
If we do it, if I'm saying it wrong, please correct me. But I think it's.
Well, I mean, like we don't have a "you're wrong" section, although I mean we could add that at some point. But for right now, all I'm gonna say is, look. For right now, all I'm gonna say is, man, Square is so obsessed with selling to companies more so than people. That's crazy to me. Will, what games are you like looking forward to for the remainder of the year?
Oh man, well, as the resident JRPG guy, because I have a metric ton of them sitting right next to me. So my first one off top, and I'm sure Sage is gonna relate to me on this one because I can't wait for it to come on out. Star Ocean: The Divine Force. I'm looking to see that hit the shelf. sometime soon. Simply for someone who's been, like I said, I'm also a collector. I collect the games, but I'm also playing them as well. And I'm ready to see if this is going to be not necessarily return to form for Star Ocean, but I want to see, can this be done correctly? Can this kind of wipe the slate clean behind integrity and faithlessness? Can that be the stand up game right now? Can it be the game we want it to be? Because the trailer looked pretty cool. They kind of, I'm not gonna lie, when they just threw it out there and it was try ace, like talk about your heart sinking straight to your ass. You're just like, whoa, they're back? They're back? It's Star Ocean? You just start yelling, you're ready for it. I'm ready to see what they do with this. But the next one I want, as I'm currently trying to play through these games now, Xenoblade Chronicles 3. To me, that was a really big surprise because I'm thinking to myself, oh, I'll see it next year. I told myself 2023. They said, no, you're seeing it this year. So you better hurry up if you want to see it. I'm like, oh.
Well, the rumor was it was supposed to come out last year, but like, COVID shut everything down, slowed everything down. So
yeah, shout outs to COVID. But yeah. Right now we waiting on this to come out, and I'm ready to see a huge story, huge, beautiful landscapes on my Nintendo Switch. God willing, you don't have a motor problem when you start playing this game. But I'm ready for it. I'm sure anyone in here else is excited for Xenoblade Chronicles 3, or at least looking at it.
Yes.
If I had a Switch, I'd probably be, but yeah.
I want giant robots in that motherfucker, but yeah. I mean, I'm excited for it. I've been playing some of Xenoblade 1. I'm about, I'd say a third of the way through Xenoblade 1. So yeah, I'm really super excited for Xenoblade 3. Hopefully, like, I can get through 1 and 2. Doubtful, but hopefully I can get through all of 1 and most of 2 before 3 comes out, because I am really hyped for it.
I'm excited for you for Star Ocean, definitely. Because Star Ocean 3 is one of my favorite games of all time. So
Star Ocean 3 was also on my list. Will mentioned, erasing integrity and faithlessness. Look, The Last Hope wasn't all of that to write home about either. So they gotta fix
that. Was I heard that one.
They gotta apologize for both. Really, the last time that franchise was untouchable was Star Ocean 2. But I personally like Star Ocean 3 quite a bit. So, I mean, to me, they only got to apologize for the last 2 games. And the thing is, with Star Ocean, if you miss, that motherfucker not coming out again for another console generation. So hopefully they get it right this time.
Yeah. Do one generation.
But I got... Go ahead.
No, you good.
Okay, all right. But I got 2 more things, and I kind of... Well, 3 more. I'm going to do a quick, scan over them. Coming forward, right now, as a person who likes fighting games, DNF Duel, since that's kind of pretty close right now. I'm looking forward to that because I never thought that I would see that game get a fighting game, even though it's kind of like, it's not your standard MMO. It's literally like a beat 'em up. So if you play Streets of Rage, Final Fight, and 99 Vitas, and any other thing like that, if you play those games, you know what a beat 'em up is. And if you know what an MMO is like, it's good. Even though I'm not going to lie, they are one of those companies that get a lot of money for their budget. And those animations and trailers be amazing. But the gameplay, I had you looking like, this is signed up for, but a lot of people love it, and I'm ready to see all of the other characters they bring in and how they really flesh them out and realize. And thank you, ArcSys, and thank you, Aiding, as well, for putting your hands in on this game. I'm ready to play it and ready to get online. Another one that I'm looking forward to is this Cuphead DLC, The Delicious Last Course.
Oh yeah, yes sir.
Finally, after beating this game 3 times,
they announced that in 2019.
It's been
a long time coming.
It's been a long time coming, bro.
Pandemic is trash, man.
I swear, bro. I beat it on PC when it released first time. I beat it on PlayStation when it came out, and I beat it again on my own spare time. I love Cuphead. I love the challenge to it and everything, and I definitely love the art style and the animation. That studio, top notch. I can't praise them enough for the work that they've done, and I can't wait to see what the Delicious Last Course looks like. And
ditto all that. I 100% agree.
And the last thing I want is a personal thing. It's not a big game, but it's more or less an indie game, and it's called 9 Years of Shadows. I just found out about this game recently.
I just saw this.
It was on Twitter. Someone had like a sprite. It's like a set of sprites drawn on. They were animated, and it looked really crazy. I was like, this looks good. And let me click on the studio. I looked them up. It's a studio based in Guadalajara. And I'm like, I'm like, that's quite a place to be based. Never thought I'd read that, but they have a game coming out at the end of this year, and it's kind of Metroidvania based. And I love Metroidvania games because I love the Castlevania series as a whole. So seeing that,
Castlevania is
I,
real.
I I haven't seen a ton of motion with the game. I just know that it's here. I've already got it wish listed on Steam. I'm ready to see that game come out. So hopefully it gets here. Everything looks amazing and it plays well. I'm ready to play that.
I mean, yeah, I like the fact that we all have like different a variety of games, but also there's some overlap. I appreciate that. Shout outs, the Star Ocean mention. I think it's like the three. There's definitely three of us that are hyped for that. Terrence, could you see yourself giving Star Ocean a shot?
I never really dived into the Star Ocean series like that. I have 3, but I never really just played it like that. I appreciate the game's existence, but I don't mind. Hey, if the game is good, I'll play it. I'm a fan of all JRPGs, so all things JRPG.
Same.
So when it comes out, if it's good and it looks like something that I want to play, hey, I'll definitely go out and buy a copy and I'll give it a try.
All right, fair enough.
Hey, that state of play when they announced it, all of us were hyped. Like I was like, "Yo, new Star Ocean."
Yeah.
So even though I don't have,
we were all hyped.
yeah, even
I
though
was
I don't
hyped.
have heavy ties to the series, I appreciate its existence. And if this new one is good, then hey, that's all I can ask for.
Well, what games are you excited for the remainder of the year?
So the games I would say, the first one, it's Forspoken, and here's the reason for
Ooh.
Forspoken. Forspoken needs to succeed for the culture, man. Forspoken, no lie, is
I
the
agree.
game that we've been wanting for so long. Like we've talked about this before in the Discord that it has like we've wanted like a JRPG with black characters. And when JRPGs, when they have black characters, they're kind of like just that one character, or it's kind of like stereotypes that come into play, kind of like Barret with Final Fantasy VII. Like Barret is a cool character, don't get me wrong, but there are some stereotypes that come into play.
And
More
we all
so-
know that.
Yeah, more so in the OG Final Fantasy VII than the new one. The new one, I think they did a pretty good job about kind of addressing those aspects and kind of changing his character up a little bit. But yeah, the fact that this is a world that has black characters, a black female protagonist, not just a black, not a black male protagonist, but a black female protagonist. I mean, that's great that sort of thing is happening, and it's a AAA RPG is being done by Square of all companies. It's like this is the moment. This needs to be a good game, and I hope it's a good game. And the fact that they delayed it, I'm hoping that means that they're really trying to up the quality, that they're not trying to make it a cookie cutter game. Because the stuff that we've seen, is some of it has been a little bit rough with the. There've been like some frame drops in some of the gameplay videos. It doesn't look the smoothest. The powers and the movement in the game, like the traversal, it looks really good. So I'm just hoping that Square is just taking the time to kind of tighten some things up. It reminds me a lot of Control. Control was one of my favorite games of last generation. I think it was underappreciated and a game that I think a lot of people should try. It reminds me of that in terms of how the powers in the game work. And like you have this protagonist that has this ability to control, like in Control, she has kind of like telekinesis, so she can have like shields and like throw like stuff from across the room. She can fly, stuff like that. And there's some of those things that are in Forspoken, but it's a bit more like elemental based, like elemental and magic based. And I just can't wait to see how it turns out. So it's one of those games where I'm crossing my fingers and crossing my toes. Like I'm hoping for the best. I'm praying that Square doesn't screw it up, because I think it's a game that will just be great for just black RPG fans. It's kind of like what Black Panther did for black people in regards to superhero movies. I think that this game, if it's good, I think it could not to that level, of course, but I think it could be a landmark and show that yes, we want these type of games, we want these type of protagonists in these kind of games. We need to see more of it, because I mean, we could do an episode on its own about how black people are ignored in fantasy, but yeah, I'm not gonna dive into that, because that's definitely a subject all on its own.
Man,
But that's a big one right there. My second game, like Will mentioned, is DNF Duel, Dungeon Fighters Duel. It's I'm not gonna go too much into it just because Will already gave the synopsis on it. But I played the first beta, skipped the second beta just because for me, the first beta was enough. Like that gave me enough of a good impression to where I would definitely want to play the game. I will say right now, I just want to see what that single player content is going to look like. Like what kind of single player modes are we going to get? Because it reminds me a lot of Granblue, and Granblue I think did a pretty good job when it came out. Like it had its little RPG mode. There's some gripes that I have with it, but you can't complain about it having like a lack of like single player content because it was definitely there. I'm curious if they'll take the MMO beat 'em up aspect of the original game and kind of put it in this one and kind of tailor it to the way this game is being done. So I'm just interested to see how the game develops going into June. So I will more than likely buy it, but I definitely want to see what the rest of the content is going to be outside of fighting. And the last game for me, this might be a surprise, is Granblue Fantasy Relink. And if it comes out this year, it's supposed to come out this year, but we'll see. It's been kind of silent, but I like the Granblue universe. I just mentioned Granblue Fantasy Versus. I didn't get into the mobile game, but when they announced Granblue Fantasy Versus, I was like, first off, this game looks beautiful, and all the characters look really interesting. And after buying Granblue Fantasy Versus, I really got into it. Like I've started to learn more about the lore of the game and everything, and that universe is amazing. And I can't wait to see.
You tried the anime?
I tried a little bit of the anime. I don't know. I heard the anime, its synopsis of the story isn't the best, but I haven't watched all of it, so I can't really like make a full opinion on it. But the Relink, I'm looking forward to, just because if it takes like the mobile game and just makes it like a full-fledged console RPG, I'm all for that. That would be amazing. I don't know if it's doing that or doing something similar to it. What is it doing exactly? Do you know?
It's basically like a side story. Like this is them going to like an island. It's like a mega island, like bigger than the normal islands, and they have their own unique adventure. That, at least as far as like when I looked it up, that was like the plan as of like a few months ago. But you know, they keep shifting shit because at one point Gran and what's the chick's name?
Vegeta.
Yeah, Vegeta. Gran and Vegeta weren't even in the game, and all of a sudden they're like, "Yep, they're in. Fuck it." So they might have just went ahead and made it like an adaptation of the mobile game. But the last time I checked, it was like an original story.
Okay, well, yeah, I mean that's fine if that's the case.
Whichever one, you know.
Yeah, and my thing is, there is some concern just because originally it was being developed by Platinum, and then it switched over to just being done in-house by Side Games. So there is a little concern there because, you know, we hadn't really seen much of it since then. Not really, but I'm hopeful. I'm hoping if it is good, I'll definitely pick it up. If it isn't, well, I mean, it'll just sit in the bargain bin and maybe be one of those games. If it's like a 7 out of 10 game, then, you know, wait for it to go on sale, maybe check it out. But if it's like an 8 or a 9 out of 10, hope like this is a big hope, like it being a 9 out of 10 kind of game, then yeah, I'll definitely run and get it. But even if it's like a 7 or 8 out of 10, I would definitely, I would go pick it up just because I really like the world, and as long as the combat is good and the story is solid, then I'll enjoy it. You know, not every game needs to blow your pants off to be a good time. So I wouldn't mind. I definitely am looking forward to seeing how it develops. And just a quick honorable mention is Multiverses, the WB game where they're having a clash of all WB properties. That's going to be crazy, especially since it's free to play. It's like, why not? So it looks good, and man, the possibilities are endless. Right now, just even with the roster they've given us right now, it's wild to see all these WB properties mixed together like this. And considering all the properties that WB owns, the possibilities are vast. So I'm looking forward to that. So those are my 3 games. If there's one game that I say I'm the most hyped for, probably Forspoken, just because I want that game to be good. I want it to be the game that people maybe had doubts at first, but then it comes out and it's like, oh, this is the real deal. I just think it needs, I'm hoping that it's that game. And if it isn't, it'll be really unfortunate. I'll put it that way.
I agree. Like, in fact, actually, like me and you kind of on like multiple games, like both Forspoken and Granblue Fantasy. Like, I'm looking forward to those games. They're not on my list, but like they are games that I was looking forward to. Yeah. Forspoken particularly because like I know black anime nerds have always loved them some JRPGs. Like going back, like all men and women, black men and black women have loved them some JRPGs.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Going all the way back. Like
absolutely.
If it's 2 genres that black fans fuck with, it's JRPGs and fighting games. Like that's just the way it is. So like I would love nothing more than for them for us to be able to have a game that is super successful, it's quality, and we can show up and show out for it and be like, yeah, this it right here, and have like a character that's like, representing us and shit like that. And hopefully they kind of nail the writing and it ain't all a bunch of, hippity hop walks and all that bullshit.
Yeah.
And hopefully the combat is on point and the world, because like at first I looked at the world, like that's really the concern I had. I got to look at a glimpse at the world and I was like, damn, this looking kind of like dull as shit. So like hopefully the world is more interesting to explore. Hopefully there's more combat to it. Or hopefully the combat is solid and fun. And then like hopefully those enemies aren't sponges, because like I saw some of the Game Informer footage. Them enemies was looking spongy as hell. So I mean like it's gonna depend on a lot of things, but I'm really hoping. I want, like, for me, if it hit like an 88 on Metacritic, I'm like, okay, this is a success.
Yeah, that's solid. That's
You know?
probably that would be the best we could ask for, probably, because I don't think it'll be like a 9 out of 10 game. It'll probably fall in like the 8.5 territory. Maybe
85, 88 is right about where I needed to be. If it hit that, then I'm good.
I mean, hell, that's where Final Fantasy VII Remake landed. So hey, you'll be in good company.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, like, if it hit that, then like, as Black fans, like all of us, like not just us on the podcast, but like every Black Japanese, you ain't got no excuse. Go out and get it. Like if it land in that Final Fantasy VII Remake era, go get that motherfucker. God damn it.
All right, man.
The 3 games that I'm most excited for, one of them Will already said, in Star Ocean. I really want that game. Star Ocean is definitely a franchise that I've loved. That was one of my favorite franchises growing up. Like, it was Lunar, which didn't last all that long. It really only got the 2 games. There was Star Ocean, which was once every generation, and then Suikoden, which is dead because Konami stopped caring about anything other than Yu-Gi-Oh! And pachinko machines. So Star Ocean is pretty much the only one that's still alive, and I actually have some hope for. And it looked good. Like, when we saw the trailer, it looked very good. It looked like a mix of a ripoff between Xenoblade Chronicles X and PSO2, New Genesis. But those are both very good games, and they're very fun. And like, if the world is interesting and the exploration, because they showed you flying. If you can fly throughout most of the world and it's fun to like fight characters, even if the story is just I'm still probably gonna love it, just because like the combat and the flying, the exploration is gonna get me a lot of the way there. The only problem I have is hopefully they know how to either build side quests in such a way that they're enjoyable to do, not like Tales, where the shits was just boring and really like the low tier side quests. Tales of Arise had some really low tier side quests, or just like take the motherfuckers out. Just don't have any. Like, if you can't write engaging side quests, if you don't want to like write a bunch of engaging characters, just take them hoes out and just make it a straightforward, play it in 40 hours and you done type of experience. I'm fine with either, just so long as it's good. The other 2 games, I'm gonna be like, there are a lot of games that I'm excited for. Grand Blue Fantasy is not on my list, but it is on my overall list of games that I'm like, yeah, I've wanted that game since they first showed it off. Terrence is right. That game looks fucking gorgeous. And the universe, like, I have watched the anime. The anime is a lot of fun. I haven't played the video game, so I don't know a lot about the story, but like, what I've seen of the anime and what I've seen of the characters, really cool world. I would love to spend some time exploring and living in that world. So yeah, that's a game that I would love to have. Starfield, not on my list, but like, it's just a given. Like, I would like for that game to be a success. Hopefully Bethesda knows what they're doing. We haven't seen any fucking footage. I know that's how they get down, but like, after 76, you need to change how you get down. The 2 games that are on my list, and I wanted to bring up those other games because these 2 games are very closely related, and I didn't want to seem too basic. But I mean, at the end of the day, I am a Cape whore. I've been a Cape whore since I was 9 years old, and I'm not gonna stop. Even though I don't love Cape comics as much as I used to, I still enjoy the idea of them. So the number 2 game is Marvel's Midnight Suns. When they first showed that off, I was like, it's giving vibes of Marvel Ultimate Alliance, but with like a magic twist to it. And that is really what we need to wash the taste out of our mouth after Marvel's Avengers came and tried to milk everybody's pockets with the most mediocre fucking campaign and like experience that they could have given. The combat in Marvel's Avengers was on point, but the fact that they stripped out every interesting locale that you could have gone to, they stripped out any interesting villains that you could have fought, and they really just kept it down to like, oh well, you hanging out with Shield. Who gives a fuck? It's Shield. That's why Marvel, the MCU, got them niggas up out of there in 2011, and we hadn't seen them since in the movies. That there's a reason for that. 2014 with not Civil War, Winter Soldier. Yeah, when they got them niggas the fuck out of there, then it's like, all right, nobody cares about Shield, like they gone, but the game just had to be obsessed with it. Marvel's Midnight Suns appears to be none of that. It's not obsessed with the MCU and trying to make things seem like the MCU. It's like, no. This is the magic corner of the Marvel Universe. We're going to get weird. We're going to have some familiar heroes like Iron Man and Captain America and Captain Marvel and Wolverine. We're going to have some familiar heroes, but we also going to have some motherfuckers you don't recognize, like Magic. I know who Magic is. A lot of people may not. She's like a obscure magic-based X-Men. Her power is that of illusion, but she got trapped inside of limbo for like not that long, but like, it's one of those hyperbolic time chamber type things where time moves differently on that end. And she like grew up in the limbo dimension, raised by demons and shit. And so she learned a shit ton of magic. And so that universe, like that corner of the universe, is gonna be fun. It's like, not quite Justice League dark, but it's in that vein. The card-based system should be interesting. That should be kind of fun to deal with. It seems like it's gonna be like a long, lengthy experience. Like they were talking about, it was gonna be like upwards of 30 hours. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what the fuck I'm looking for. They got the upgrades, the character customization, different costumes. It's got everything that I'm looking for in a Marvel video game. So I'm hoping that it's great. I was a little bummed it got delayed, but if that means it's going to be a better game, then, And then the game that I'm most excited for, which is a bit shocking. I mean, like, for people who know me, they'd be like, why are you hyped for this game? Gotham Knights. And I mean, like, y'all know me. I don't give a fuck about Batman. I haven't given a fuck about Batman in years. Like, I remember I cared about Batman when I was a kid, when I was like 8. It's like John Cena. You like him when you're 8, and then you're like, all right, look, get this motherfucker out of here. Batman, the overexposure of Batman exhausts me. However, I have always loved all of the Bat family. I've loved Nightwing. I've loved Batgirl. I've loved Tim Drake Robin. I grew up on those characters. Like, those are some of my favorite fucking characters. And so, like, to see them all in a video game together, it's like that felt like the next logical step in Arkham Knight, and we didn't get it. They just gave us a fucking Batman game and was like, well, he back, he's got all his powers. I'm like, what power? Like, he needed some friends. He needed no more gadgets. But I mean, they paid the price with that game. It's kind of not really all that fondly remembered. You say what?
What a missed opportunity with Arkham Knight.
Yep. Like it's not nearly as fondly remembered as Arkham City or Arkham Asylum. You have like the super Arkham fans that are like, oh, it's just as good, but like, come on, man, we all know what it was. It's not. But Gotham Knights really does seem like it's doing a lot of fun things. It's got a populated Gotham City. It's allowing you to switch between characters. You do have the ability to customize all of your characters. You can customize the costumes, the way that they fight, that they can interact with each other. You can do team ups if you want. So it can be like a dynamic duo, Nightwing and Robin, or Nightwing and Batgirl, or Red Hood and Batman, or Red Hood and Batgirl. Like, you can do whatever. Like, that game just seems like it should be like good. The only thing I hate is that we haven't seen anything of it in like 2 years, but it does finally have a release date. It's coming out in October. I like, while I'm looking forward to all, like, many of the games that y'all talked about, Final Fantasy 16, I don't think it's going to come out this year. I would love for it to come out this year. I would love for it to be on some Starfield type. Look, we're going to show it off, and then in 6 months it's coming out. I would love for that to happen. But like, the game that I'm most excited for by far is Gotham Knights, just because that's like, there aren't that many occasions where you get to take your favorite character into a video game and play as, and then the game is good. So like, being able to play as Tim Drake and go into a world and beat up Mr. Freeze and whoever the fuck else, I'm not gonna get that a lot, like, there still ain't no Iron Man game, that VR game, that shit don't count. You gotta have privilege goggles for that. So like, until they come out with some more games, like Wonder Woman, I don't know when Wonder Woman is gonna come out. That's years from now. So like, right now all I got is Robin, or I can play Avengers. But I mean, like, I played that, like, I put 100+ hours into that, and there's not that much in there in the first place. The combat's good, but after a while you just be playing. So I mean, like, right now what I really want is just for Gotham Knights to be a hit. So, but yeah, I mean, like, those are the 3 games. And what's going on, Will?
I wanted to pinpoint a small something on your words with Star Ocean, one of the things that kind of came to me with Star Ocean is like Rakeem said, Square kind of in their bag right now, so they just dropping IP after IP and going back and bringing stuff out. The one thing that's gonna worry me with Star Ocean is that M word, marketing. I wonder how they're gonna try to push this
Great
out.
point.
Since they're pushing this game back out to us again, since like you said, Sage, once every console generation we get a Star Ocean. How are they gonna push this game towards us to be like, hey, we're back again. Come try this game out. It's heat. How can they go about doing that?
I can answer that question.
Go
They
ahead.
are going to leave it to die. Like they announced it, and you haven't heard anything else about it, but it's supposedly a Q2 game. It's a Q2 game. This is Q2. We're in Q2 right now, and they are not hyping that game up. We haven't seen any more footage. So unless that motherfucker gets delayed, they're going to leave it to die the same way they left Neo, The World Ends With You to die. And the best thing we can get is that it is like Neo, The World Ends With You, and it's like a really good fucking game for the audience, but like it don't sell worth of shit. Like, yeah, I mean, that's, you know, if it don't sell, if it sells what Star Ocean 5 sells, that's still apparently enough for it to get another incarnation down the line some kind of way. But like, all I want is for it to be good. The sales, I normally think about sales a lot, but like knowing Star Ocean and the fact that like even if it's sold, unless it sold some Fire Emblem type shit, Fire Emblem Awakening, Fire Emblem Fates type shit, unless it's sold like that, it's not gonna be. They're not gonna make another one this gen. Like, so all I want is for it to be good because that's the only thing we got anyway. So, but if you're wondering how they're going to market it, not very well. They're not like it's one of those games that is not a priority for them. They like someone high up in Square, and this is how Square works. Like they've said it. If you have somebody that's high up to champion an IP, they'll make it. Like if you have a higher up enough producer or director that's like, yeah, why don't we back? Somebody at Square will be like, I mean, why not? So I just wanted to come back, whether it's good or not is I mean, I just wanted to come back and be good. Sales and like marketing, it ain't gonna get marketed. I'm sorry. I apologize.
I mean, that's understandable. It's just something that crossed my mind. I was like, damn, y'all showed it to us. Y'all just popped it back on us like, hey, it's Star Ocean time. And I'm just
have
like,
you seen it again?
No, I have not.
They ain't gonna show it to you. They gonna show it to you a couple of weeks, like, and they might start showing it to you this week, like this week or next week, maybe next month. But like, I doubt it. I would not be surprised if you didn't see that shit again until like right before E3, and then they told you it was coming out in July.
So kind of like the new Valkyrie profile, where they're probably not gonna show too much about it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be real with you about Valkyrie Profile. As someone who's played the first game, got the second game, and have played the mobile game, I'm gonna be real with you. With that game right there, the way that went, it did well on PlayStation 1, I'm sure. And it went to PS2, and I think it did okay.
Yeah.
They're not gonna bring the next Valkyrie story out. I don't see it like that, even though we are getting another one. And with the way this game is looking, it's gonna take some time for it to get some polish and to look well. They're not going to push this game out like that, and I hate to say that for a game that's actually really going to be that's really good. A series
Does that have a release date?
Good.
The Valkyrie game?
No, it doesn't. I think it's this year, but not a release date, like not a specific one. If there is,
so 2022 is the release date, a release year.
Yeah, so it's this year, but we don't know when. I don't think that it's going.
They're gonna have to kick that down. They're gonna have to kick that can down the road because, like, I have no idea. Like, unless they're gonna have like a year where they just don't release shit, except like. Presumably, I still think Final Fantasy gets pushed because we hadn't heard anything about it. So unless it's just Final Fantasy 16 next year and nothing else.
Yeah. Well, you know they've been doing this thing where they've been pushing out like really smaller titles. Like they had the card game thing last year. That weird mobile style game where it was like
dungeon encounters and shit like
that. Dungeon encounters like that. There's been like this emphasis with them like pushing out really small titles in between the bigger titles. So that's probably like their strategy. They'll have like a smaller game. They might have some like that new strategy game they announced. That would probably be a new smaller title for them.
I mean, they still haven't, and actually, I'm lying. They got Dragon Quest. They had like multiple Dragon Quest.
Dragon Quest
DQ12 and DQ3 HD, and then also the Saga game and then the Mana games. Both of those are supposed to be in the works, so they could come out with that next year maybe. So who knows? Anyway. I think that is going to wrap it up for this week's episode. So if you enjoyed it, I need you to do a couple of things for us. I need you to hit the subscription button on YouTube, hit the notification bell, follow us on Twitter and TikTok, and tell your friends about us. The last thing I need you to do is a personal favor. I need you to have an amazing week. Peace.